Hey guys, I'm Jessie, and today I have my April wrap-up for you. April was a ridiculously busy month for me, so I didn't read as much as I had planned to or wanted to because I just had a lot going on. I ended up quitting my job in April, which was like really insane because I've been there for 4 years and I loved where I worked. I loved the people, but like it was time to move on. And just a week ago, at the very end of April, I started a new job. So I've been onboarding and, that takes up a lot of time. Like it's a, full-time job. I do have a full, regular, normal person job. And yeah, I've just been getting used to that. And then, the transition. And then I also had a media event, which was my first Disney media event since 2019, which was insane, right? I have worked with Disney. I've said it multiple times. Over the past 5 years, I have worked with Disney quite a bit, as well as with their marketing team, with their media department. I do a lot of media events, press stuff for them. And I was invited on a 3-day trip where we got to kind of meet a lot of their marketing team. We got to do some really cool stuff in the parks, and I actually have a vlog that I am working on editing that will be up for you guys soon, but I have a lot of the content over on my Coffee Mom Instagram right now. I'm working on blog posts and all kinds of stuff, from that event. There was just a lot. It was 3 full days, at park, and then, doing a bunch of stuff. It was very structured, which was really cool. They showed us a bunch of stuff. We learned a bunch of stuff. It was great, but it took up a lot of my time, right? It's 3 days, but after that, I still had, photos to edit and things like that because it was a work trip. But yeah, April was just a ridiculously busy month, but I still managed to read quite a few books. I did have some DNFs, which honestly, that's fine with me because this year I am in the DNFing mood. I am cleaning up my shelves. I'm doing my exploding TBRs every quarter. So, that's been going on. I had a surprise book, so that was interesting. We'll talk about it. But yeah, it's been a pretty decent month. I participated in Tour.comathon 2022, which is put on by Beautifully Bookish Bethany with a whole host of lovely co-hosts. That was so much fun, and I would love to do that again because it kind of pushed me to read some of those Tour.com novellas that I've had on my shelf forever and have been meaning to get to. So now that all my rambling is done, we are going to jump into talking about all of the books that I did manage to read in the month of April. First, I read the group book for Tour.comathon, and that was Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor. I ended up giving this 4 stars, but I think it's more like a 3.5 if I'm being honest. It is a short novella. I really enjoyed it, but I don't think I liked it as much as I liked Benti, which is one of their other books. And it was not what I expected, I think, going in. And I think a big thing of that was the marketing. So everything I'd heard about this book was it is the adopted daughter of death. And I expected that to be literal, right? And I think a lot of us did. Expected it to kind of be she is literally the daughter of death or the adopted daughter of death. That's not the case. So that was surprising to me. But it was very well written for just a slice of life, very character driven, kind of sci-fi futuristic type novella. And I think my only real complaint was I wish there would have been more to it. It was so character driven. We are following our main girl who loves to, climb trees. She loves her family, really smart, young girl, 10 years old, I want to say, between 7 and 10. And so one day something falls from the sky and she keeps calling it a seed, and the seed is in a box, and she ends up it's hers. She has it. She's really obsessed with it. It lights up. We don't really know what it is. And then one day her dad sells it to some politician, and then the politician's murdered or stolen from, and then the seed goes missing, and she ends up, everything's normal, whatever. She gets hit by a car, and all of a sudden she has these abilities that I guess had lain dormant and she didn't know she had, and she like massacres her entire village, parents, everything, like everyone. She massacres her entire village just by like radiating this light out of her that she doesn't know. And you have to keep in mind she's like 10 at this time, so she kind of goes off on her own and she's traveling. She can't touch electronics, any kind of technology, because it will just die, right? Like she can't touch a phone, she can't travel in a car, televisions, things like that. She can't touch it or else it'll die. And then she starts to learn to control her ability to kill people with this magical light. And, you know, people hate her, but there's like this folklore that kind of springs up about her where, you know, people either fear her or respect her. And she doesn't like remember her own name. And she like is really... It's sad. It's very isolationist because you feel for this character. Like, you really do feel for the character. And Nnedi Okorafor's writing is fantastic. I think my real complaint, though, is that it was short. And, like, I didn't get that arc that I wanted. I didn't get that plot that I wanted because it was so character-driven, I think. And while it's really great, like the arc overall, we get to follow this young girl and see as she kind of, you know, comes to accept herself and her lot in life and, you know, really come into her own. I wanted more, I think, of like an overarching plot. Like, there's a lot of unanswered questions, but overall, I still did enjoy it. So if you are new to reading like Nnedi Okorafor's books, I don't think that this is one that I would recommend to read first off. I would go with Benti because it's more structurally, I think, what I am used to in a story, at least, where there's like, it's character, but like there's plot, right? Whereas Remote Control is much more character driven. So take that as you will, but I did enjoy it. It was like a 3.5 star. Then I ended up reading another novella. You'll see a trend. I read quite a few novellas for Tour.com-a-thon. I finished Black God's Drums by P. Djeli Clark, and I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. Again, it was a quick read. This follows another like young girl. So she's like 13, orphan, living on the streets of like a futuristic New Orleans, but it's futuristic, but it's set in the 1800s. And it's in a world where the Civil War never really ended. There's still a division between North and South, and there's just kind of like an armistice right now. And New Orleans is like a free territory. And we're following her, and she has like the voice of, you know, one of the old African gods in her head. And she kind of goes on this like journey to save a inventor who has been kidnapped by the Confederates. And basically they want to use this like thing that he has invented to get the war started back up again, basically. It was really good. There's like airships and gods, but it's also like, you know, 1800s setting. It was really cool. And it's written in a lot of dialect, I will say that. It didn't bother me being from Florida and like not what you think, not like South Florida, like being from like countryside of Florida. The dialect didn't bother me at all. It was fine, but I could see that bothering some people, the fact that it was like written, like the dialogue was written in dialects. So be aware of that, but I really, really enjoyed this one. Next, we're coming to my first DNF, and that is Witches Steeped in Gold. I tried. This is the gorgeous, like, isn't it beautiful, Fairy Loot edition, and I think I made it 120 pages, and I just didn't care. I know. I didn't ever feel invested in the characters or the story. Like, it had such a cool premise where it's these two witches from opposing sides of this kind of like political divide. One is a prisoner, and she was like the empress's daughter, and her whole family slaughtered. All her people are imprisoned or enslaved, basically. And then the new ruling class, who was the usurper, is that how you say it? They kind of overthrew. The other witch is one of them, and she is the daughter of the current ruling monarch. And I think at some point they're gonna have to work together, but like it wasn't even that far in yet. Like at 100 and something pages, it was not even that far in. I just couldn't. I don't know why. I just couldn't connect to this. I wasn't feeling it. So we're just going to DNF it. I didn't want to push through. And this is one off of my exploding TBR. Then I read All Systems Red by Martha Wells, the first book in the Murderbot Diaries. I gave this 5 stars. I had so much fun reading this. I loved Murderbot. Like an introverted murder robot who literally just wants to watch their TV shows and be left alone. Don't want nothing to do with nobody else. And I loved it. It was just so much fun, right? There was like a really good amount of humor in this, and Murderbot's like voice cracked me up. Like their internal monologues and how they react to situations, and the fact that it's like they don't like humans so much, but they kind of start to like this like group of humans that they're supposed to be protecting. And it's just a lot of fun is how I would describe this book. It's sci-fi, but it's not like overly confusing sci-fi, because you know I kind of struggle with some sci-fi. If it's like too sciencey, I'm like, oop, my brain just went bloop and is out. But no, this was a lot of fun, and I'm excited to read the rest of the series. Then we have probably my favorite book of the month, and that is Middle Game by Shauna Maguire. Of course, I gave this 5 stars because I'm saying it was my favorite of the month. I loved this. Like, I'm so late for the hype train for Middle Game, but then again, I say I read it just in time because now I'm ready for Seasonal Fears. As soon as I finished this and I saw that there's a like sister sequel kind of coming out, I pre-ordered it, and that should be here whenever it releases. I think it comes out very soon, like end of May, sometime in May. But we are following these twins, Roger and Dodger, and they are like created in a lab, separated at birth, and they're being like watched, you know, through their whole life by this like group of like evil alchemists basically. And they're supposed to embody this doctrine. And one of them is math and one of them is language. And they're kind of kept apart. And all the time they keep, you know, finding each other and coming together. And when they do, sometimes there's catastrophic results, right? And it is so good. I loved it. It is a little confusing. I would definitely put this more in like a sci-fi genre as opposed to fantasy, but it definitely like toes that line. So I would probably say that this is like sci-fantasy, which tends to be one of my favorites. I'm learning about myself. I like sci-fantasy where it's got like scientific elements to it as well as that fantastical element. So definitely up my alley. It is very comparable to like Frankenstein and like The Wizard of Oz. And I know those two don't sound like they go together, but they go together beautifully. And I definitely recommend this one to anyone. I loved it. Going along with Middle Game by Shauna Maguire, I also read Over the Woodward Wall by Deborah A. Baker, who is also Shauna Maguire. This is a novella, short story, kid story, very Wizard of Oz, and it's supposed to be. And this is the kid's story mentioned in paragraphs and things in Middle Game. So this is actually a huge part of Middle Game, but you don't have to have read Middle Game in order to like understand this. It's a completely stand on its own first book in a series. I did not know that this was going to be like a series though. I thought it was just going to be this book. So there is other books in this series that I'm going to have to read, because the way it ends, you're like, oh, I thought we were going to get more of a conclusion than that, but we don't. But yeah, this was so fun. We follow these 2 kids from the same neighborhood who have never met, but they're on opposite sides of the street. One's real prim and proper, and one is kind of a like a free spirit, right? And they end up, you know, their paths kind of cross. They end up over this wall and in this like Wonderland-esque place, kind of Oz-like. And they have to follow the improbable road to find their way home, where they meet a bunch of both good and bad people that kind of either try to stop them or help them. And I absolutely loved it. And I think reading it right after I read Middle Game made a huge difference to my enjoyment, because I was like, oh, like some of the passages are, you know, exactly like they were in the book, because it's like she took those and then expanded upon them, because this was written after. And I really, really loved it. And it was just really cool to see those connections, but you don't, like I said, need to read Middle Game in order to like this. Then we have another 5-star novella, and that was The Test by Sylvia Nouvelle. I definitely read this super quick. It's super short, but I was like, when I read it, like it was just like a fast-paced, non-stop ride from start to finish. And everybody that says that this is comparable to an episode of Black Mirror, they are correct, right? I usually hate when things are compared to Black Mirror because I like Black Mirror, and a lot of people will compare stuff to Black Mirror, and it's like, it's not, right? Like, it's like, okay, how did you get that comparison? This feels like it could be an episode of Black Mirror. Totally. We are following this man from Iran, and he and his family have immigrated to the UK, and he has to take a citizenship test. And this citizenship test, only adults over the age of, I think, like 17 or 16 have to take it. So he is taking it for his entire family. And if he passes his citizenship test, then they are all officially citizens of the UK. If not, they have to go back to Iran, and they don't want that. So he's there to take his test, and then like gunmen come in, and it like just goes wild from there. That is all I will tell you. Because going in blind, like, all you need to know is there's this guy from Iran, and he's taking a citizenship test, and it is wild, and it is Black Mirror. So, I had a lot of fun with this one. Then we're getting down to my second DNF of the month, and that was There Will Come a Darkness. I started reading this last month. I thought I was going to finish it, but honestly, every time I picked it up, I was like, meh. Like, it wasn't bad. I was just very meh about it. And at this point, if I'm feeling meh and not wanting to read it, I'm not going to read it. This was on my Q1 exploding TBR. And it's the only one that I didn't finish that I thought I was going to finish. I tried. It just didn't hit me. We follow a lot of different character POVs. And in the beginning, I was really interested because there's this, like, prophecy that there will be this like great evil, and then there will be like a chosen one type person that will save everybody. There's this group of paladins that are like looking out for the chosen one, and then everybody in this world, like, magic is a normal thing. They call graces, but not everybody has one, and they're all a little bit different. And there's this like fanatical group that is trying to like wipe out everybody with graces because they say that they're like terrible. And it's interesting in theory, but it just didn't hit me well, so I'm just gonna DNF it. Then we have one that I started forever ago, sat down for a while, and then finally picked up and finished, and that is The Shadowed Sun by N.K. Jemisin. This is the second book in the Dreamblood duology. I ended up, I think, giving this 4 stars. I liked it. I did not love it, and it wasn't, you know, top tier the way that, like, the 5th season was for me, right? There was a lot going on in this book that kind of bothered me, but like I pushed through it and it ended up being fine. We're following different characters in book 1 and 2. There is a little bit of crossover, but our main characters are different. They are set, I think, like 10 years apart. So this is 10 years after the events of book 1. And we are following the first female in the Hedawa, which is their kind of like religious organization of priests, and they each kind of do different things, and they have dream magic, and they each kind of do different things. There's either like gatherers, and they like gather your souls, or like there's healers. I forget what they call them. Sharers. That's what our main girl is. She's a sharer, which is basically a healer, and she's the first female. And then we also follow a prince who was a child during book 1. It is now like kind of an outcast rebel, and he wants to like come take his country back. And, you know, we're following a bunch of different POVs, and there's a lot going on. And there's actually one, I guess, plot thread that really was very difficult for me to read, and I'm not easily triggered. There is triggers in this for child abuse, for incest, and for forced sexual relations. And it was difficult, like, to read, because, like, one scene in particular, it was pretty disturbing, and I just, it's not something I wanted to read about. Like, it makes sense as to why it's in the story, and I wouldn't say it was, like, gratuitous for no reason, but, it just, I wasn't a fan. We do not with those characters. We do end up getting a slight romance in this book, which honestly, I didn't love the romance aspect of this book. I liked more in book 1 how there was like no romance. I didn't love the romance in this book, but it was well written. It was still a really cool world. There was just like some issues I had with it, but that was the conclusion of the Dreamblood duology. And then finally, I read Acotar by Sarah J. Maas. I gave this 3 stars. If you watch me, you've probably already seen my weird ranty video about this book because I didn't know what to think of it. If you haven't, you can go check that out. I'll link it. It's very spoilery, so don't watch it if you haven't read the book or whatever. But yeah, this was a weird one. I know this is like a darling, and I think I went in with expectations of something different than what it was. I knew it was a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I definitely expected this to be more smutty or more spicy, and it wasn't. It was so bland and like vanilla. And I was like, okay, this is what everyone's raving about. Like, I don't get it. I did not like any of the characters, really. Like, they were all really annoying. I liked Lucian, though. Yeah, I liked Lucian. But, like, it was just kind of meh, okay? And, like, I didn't get the hype, right? I just didn't get the hype. And now everyone has told me, oh, read book 2, read book 2, read book 2. That's where the hype comes in. I'm like, okay. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. But I'm probably going to read book 2, but, like, I'm not going to rush out to get it. Like, if I see it at the used bookstore or on Kindle Unlimited or, you know, something along those lines, I'll pick it up, but not in a hurry. Feyre was probably the most annoying female main character. Like, I couldn't feel for her. And, like, some of the plot aspects just didn't make sense to me. Yeah, go watch that other video if you want to hear me talk all about this book, but sorry if I hated your fave. All right, well, that is everything that I read in the month of April. Like I said, it wasn't a bad reading month as far as what I was able to get done in the time that I had because I had such an insane month overall. But I'm really happy with it. I'm getting rid of at least 2 books off my shelf. They're going to the unhaul pile. And yeah, that always makes me feel good because that leaves room for more. And I went to the used library sale thing recently, so I need room for more because, ooh, I found some good ones. All right, well, thank you guys for hanging out with me. My name is Jessie, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.